As the largest school district in Texas, HISD is considered to be a property-wealthy district, which means we must send $162 million from our property taxes to the state. But HISD faces challenges that other property-wealthy districts do not. Here's a short video explaining what voters will see at the polls on November the 8th.
Houston's economy is strong and diverse. But to maintain that foundation, Houston needs students with the education and tools to compete in today's global economy. Unfortunately, our students face a major obstacle, an outdated school finance system that is forcing HISD to slash budgets for the coming school year, impacting class sizes, tutoring, and educational programs across our city. It's all because HISD is subject to sending $162 million of local property taxes to the state. On November 8th, local voters will be given the option of authorizing the $162 million payment, which would be made in the form of attendance credits. If authorized by voters, HISD will begin making annual recapture payments for the foreseeable future. If voters don't authorize the purchase of attendance credits, then the Texas Education Agency will detach commercial property from HISD and reassign it to the tax rolls of other districts, unless the Texas Legislature makes changes to the school finance system when it reconvenes in 2017. For more information, visit HoustonISD.org/recapture.
Joining me now to explain more about what this could mean to our classrooms and the Houston economy is Deputy Superintendent and Chief Financial Officer Ken Huewitt. Ken, we've had this problem with Robinhood for years, but this is the first time that HISD has had to send recapture payments back to the state. Why is this happening?
Well, the recapture is based on two components. It's the property values of a school district and divided by the weighted average daily attendance, which is what we call WADA. And this formula is in statute. And as the statutory limit for equalized wealth of a school district exceeds a certain level, that school district becomes subject to recapture. Now, previously, the legislature has always adjusted that equalized wealth level in the past sessions so that HISD was never required to pay recapture because we didn't exceed that level. This last session, however, they did make an adjustment, but it was only just enough to keep us out for 1 year. And so now our equalized wealth level has exceeded it, and so now we're subject to having to pay the state back recapture.
Earlier I mentioned Robinhood. Robinhood has been around since 1992. How many recapture districts started with Robinhood? I
think back in '92 there were probably 23 school districts that paid in about $112 million of recapture. Currently, there's the Texas Education Agency has reported that there are 243 school districts now paying into recapture, and the Legislative Budget Board has estimated that amount that those 243 school districts are going to pay in this biennium is about $3.8 billion.
So we're giving the state, the school districts, $3.8 billion. And how much does the state give back to the school districts based on their tax rate?
Well, I'll use HISD. For us, the school district will receive about $109 million from the Foundation School Program. However, we will pay back $162 million. And so, although you get something, but you pay back more. And if this is one of those things that continues, we will continue to pay back more than we receive for the Foundation School Program.
So the November ballot will read, authorizing the Board of Trustees of the Houston Independent School District to purchase attendance credits from the state with local tax revenues. Well, that sounds good. But what is confusing about that?
Well, yeah, it does sound good. I mean, when you think about credits, you're thinking, oh, that's something good for us. But purchase attendance credits is just another way of And that's language in the statute, and that language basically means that you will use your recapture dollars to purchase attendance credits from the state. And so that's just another way of saying you're subject to recapture.
Send me your money.
Yes.
Please explain what does purchasing attendance credits mean? We just kind of touched that, but can you expound a little bit on how that affects HISD?
Well, again, for HISD, purchasing attendance credits is really just, and it's obviously it's subject to a vote of our constituents, but it is just simply if they vote for it, that they will authorize HISD to begin making payments in purchasing attendance credit from the state. That's what it means. It just means recapture.
So I'm going to put it a little more plainly.
Okay.
These taxes are coming from our general fund. It's money that we use here to pay teachers, to provide programs, to pay for transportation, to do whatever we need to do within the school system to educate our children. And if we have to send $162 million back to the state this first year, then we will have to reduce our services to the students in the following year. Am I right?
That's correct. And as you know, we just in making cuts to be able to, if the voters choose to do this, to pay $162 million back, we've had to cut deep within HISD this past budget season. And part of that was $40 million of it coming from just our campus budgets. And so to your point, as far as what that equates to, that's a reduction in educational programs, that's a potential reduction in tutors, maybe an increase in class sizes. It's a number of things that would stem from having to remove that amount of money from our district budget. And again, it is used for basically the operations of the school district.
I mentioned it, you mentioned it about the ballot in November and the voters voting for it. You know, how did we get to this point that we have this on the ballot and we need to ask our constituency whether they want to approve it or not?
So the statute, when you exceed that equalized wealth level, the statute requires that your constituents now have the option of voting for or against recapture. And so by us exceeding it, we've had to place it on the ballot. Now, the statute also requires, and the board had to place it on the ballot because you have to allow the constituents to vote for or against it in order and place this on the ballot in order to be able to set your tax rate. And so you're not even able to set your tax rate until you follow the steps with regards to placing it on the ballot and then allowing your constituents to vote for it. Let me speak to a little bit about voting for or against it. So when you vote for it, what that means is you're voting to purchase the attendance credits, and you only have to do this one time. So, so once you vote for purchasing attendance credits, future year recapture payments don't have to go back out for a vote. So it's a one-time vote for doing that. If you vote against it, which means we're not saying that we want to send those dollars and purchase attendance credits. By statute, the legislature still, or Texas Education Agency still has us subject to recapture. And so their option then is to detach your highest price or highest value commercial property and detach enough of that property until your equalized wealth level gets down to where it's not exceeding the statutory limit. And that is, you would detach that property to the commercial property to other school districts. And when you send it to other school districts, their tax rate most likely will be different than HISD's tax rate. And so those commercial properties will be subject to a tax rate different than ours, mostly probably higher, and they will send their tax dollars to those school districts that are outside of HISD. And that is obviously revenue that we will not have within our district to educate our students.
Well, I just heard you say a couple of things that I think I need to repeat.
Okay.
If you vote for this and if it passes, then we will be sending money to the state for each year after that without the state or without the people having to authorize that again?
That's correct.
Forever and ever and ever and ever?
Until someone makes a change to the statute.
Okay. Then I heard you say detached property, commercial property.
Yes.
Houston has a pretty robust economy. We have the Galleria, we have Williams Towers, we have Shell Building, all these buildings, and those are commercial properties. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So when you say detach them, then they just kind of remove them off of our tax rolls and assign them to somebody else.
That is correct.
Now, in order to get to the $162 million to detach, how much property would have to be removed from our rolls?
We're estimating that it's $18 billion, and that's with a B. $18 billion of property to get to the $162 million recapture amount. And as property values, so if that occurs, as property values continue to go up in the future, they would detach additional property, again, to get us back down to the equalized wealth level, that's statutory limit.
And once it's detached, it doesn't come back the next year to be counted for you. It stays detached.
That's correct.
So if I vote for this, then I vote automatically to send money to the state of Texas that should be HISD money.
That's correct. And we also estimate that voting for it and sending money away, we estimate that probably in 4 years we will send over $1 billion to the state as a result of that.
Monies that should go to students and teachers.
Money that is necessary for running the operations of Houston Independent School District.
Okay. If I go out there and I vote no, and all the voters vote no, what happens then? What happens at the state level in order to probably, hopefully, resolve this problem?
So that provides an opportunity for the state to take this up in the legislative session, because if our voters vote against this item, then the state's next step basically is to prepare to detach properties. Now that would be in July of 2017, and so there's time between the voters, say, voting against this and July of 2017 for the legislature to take some actions to look at this, study this matter a little bit more, and figure out some way to avert or lessen the effect of this recapture on Houston ISD.
So the legislature comes into session in January of 2017, and they would have a chance. Is this the first time that a district may vote this statute down?
Well, I think, well, there's out of the 243 districts, obviously that are subject to recapture, they've all gotten to that point where they voted for it. I think I'm not aware of this action where a district has voted against it and the state has had to implement the detachment action. So I'm not aware of that happening or ever occurring.
Being the largest school district in the state of Texas, this would have a definite impact on the way school finances continue to be funded. So with the state legislature, going all the way back to Robin Hood has always been a Band-Aid remedy. And the courts have told the legislature to go ahead and fix this 3 times. The legislature has been sued 3 times, and each time school districts have won, but they haven't fixed the problem. How do you see HISD and recapture affecting the way we fund schools?
Well, I think it's one, being the largest school district in the state, almost 80% economically disadvantaged. A third of our students are English language learners. It is, I would venture to say that the intent of Robin Hood or recapture in the early years we weren't the model that they were shooting for to be subject to recapture. And I think, with the courts, the latest ruling by the Texas Supreme Court saying that the state funding system met the minimum requirements of the Constitution, was somewhat of a blow. But they also pointed out that it needs a major transformation, if you will, and Band-Aid after Band-Aid is not appropriate, and that they should do something about it. And I think this with HISD being part of this now, and other large school districts, following shortly thereafter, if this doesn't change, I think this is probably a wake up to say, maybe we really should be, take a look at this and hit the pause button for a second and make sure the intended consequences are what was planned.
Again, we talked about the funds being necessary for the district to be able to operate. When we talk about the quality of education, and we just spoke with the superintendent, how does that affect the quality of education?
Well, the $162 million is about 8% of our budget, of our maintenance and operations budget, which we use obviously to do teaching and learning. When you take 8% out of a budget, that's for an organization that's labor intensive, it does affect it. It does affect the livelihood of our employees, the supplies or those type of things that we can provide, the learning tools, the technology equipment that's needed for digital learning, just a number of things. And this is really a setback to continuing growth and trying to move the needle for our students. And so this is no small hurdle to get over as far as trying to ensure that our students have the best opportunity to learn.
So the November ballot, one more time. Vote for attendance credits means take my money forever and ever and ever. You don't have to ask me again. Every year we're going to have to send money to the state.
Every year you're subject to recapture once you vote for it the first time.
If I vote against it, we're saying, stop. We're not going to do this. We're not going to send you any money. So then the state, before it can really do anything in July, has the opportunity to try and adjust the funding formulas to take Houston out of recapture.
Yeah, that's correct. And probably not just Houston, but to again avert or delay or whatever for other school districts as well that are subject to this law.
Well, Ken, thank you for taking the time to explain this, and I think we'll have to come back and touch this subject again before the November 8th election.
Absolutely.
But it's going to be very important for our constituents to get out there and vote. So please, I'm asking them to get informed on this topic, to understand what they're voting for, and then on November 8th to go out and vote.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
For more information about the controversial Texas school finance system and Robin Hood, go to HoustonISD.org/recapture. Also, I urge you to contact your state representatives and senators and let them know your interest in HISD schools and how Robin Hood is impacting Houston. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on HISD Up Close.